Okay guys, in this video I'm going to cover the installation of a Windows server. I'm going to cover it really fast because I don't really want to waste time. The installation will be very similar to the installation of a Windows client with maybe a few slight variations. So I'm going to do it really fast. If you already know how to install or you don't need a revisit for this topic, you can just go ahead and skip it. As you can see, it's similar to the same approach as before. I'll install it later. I'll select the server class just for best practice. The location wise, I'm going to leave it with the default. It goes to UEFI. The default of 2 cores, 2 processor, 1 core is cool. The memory is 2 gigs for a bit more horsepower. In terms of networking, I'm going with the bridge approach. I'm going with the defaults of the SCSI, the IO, the disk. All of those types will go with default. Create a new virtual drive. I'm gonna leave it at 60 gig for the concept. I won't split the disk as I mentioned before, and then I'm going to go with the default location of where the disk will sit, and just gonna start it. Once this installation will be complete, I'm gonna continue and boot the machine. Once I boot the machine, it will start without the disk. I'm going to use the same process as before to mount an ISO file. I'm going to go to the settings of the virtual disk. I'm going to configure the ISO file to go to the Windows server, and then basically just make sure it's connected and reboot the machine. Once the machine will be rebooted, it's going to go for the boot from disk. And once the boot from disk takes place, the Windows installation for the Windows server will start. A very straightforward process to install the server today. The main idea with Windows is they went for the approach of as little clicks as possible in order to get everything installed, and then have all the configuration done post-installation once you're in the OS environment, which is a very good move, by the way. Good job, Microsoft. So I'm going to stop it here. Once I'm going to select, this is a very important part. You see this desktop experience, like there's 2 archetype. If you go with the default now, it goes with a Windows Core, which means you won't have a UI. It's going to be a PowerShell CLI based, very similar to a Linux server. So we're going to go with a desktop experience. In a lab environment, there's really no reason why not to go with this desktop experience unless you want to learn the core approach a bit more. The main idea is that you're going to use the version that suits you for your lab purposes. And I'm going to use a lot of graphical interface to explain and do stuff. So there's really no reason to go with core. And I'm not really worried about resources, which is the main focus of going with core. Resources and better security posture. So I'm going to go with the desktop experience. I'm going to click the next. And once it goes there, I accept the terms. I select the disk that I want to install the operating system on. And pretty much I'm going to stop the video here and continue once it's done. Once the Windows Server installation is complete, it will go to the Windows screen of basically the initial configuration. I'm going to specify a password for the administrator account and click the finish, and now it does the final prep. As you can see, it finishes, asks you to log in, and once it does the initial configuration of a new fresh machine, you're going to be logged into your machine and you're going to start from there. So I'm gonna click yes to make the network shareable and everything, and I'm just gonna cover the basic things that we covered in the previous videos: installing creating a snapshot, installing the VirtualBox tools, the Vmware tools more precisely. And as you can see, there is minor differences in the UI in terms of what we're getting in experience, but really there's not much difference. Now we're going to go with the installation of the Vmware tools. So install Vmware Tools. Installation process will be next. Nothing special going on here. We'll ask for a reboot at the end of the process. You can see there's no main differences between the client and the server in terms of prepping them for the next step. The main difference comes with the software and the things you'll install after the fact, and the options that you have in a server that does not exist in a client. So it finished the installation. I'm going to go ahead and give it a reboot. And once the reboot will be done, I'm going to create a snapshot. So that's the last step. I'm going to pause it here and continue once it reboots. Now I'm going to cover a few of the steps that we need to take in order to get the lab a bit more user-friendly. So we'll be able to copy files, we'll be able to move files between the labs and create the shares needed in order for it to happen. So first of all, I go to the Windows clients and I need to repeat this process in the server as well. I'm going to go to the settings. I'm going to go to the options, and then you can see that we already have a lot of stuff like Vmware Tools. These are some of the features that we're able to share or give enhanced capabilities to this virtual machine. And as you can see, we have snapshots, we have virtual tools, we have all kinds of settings here that helps us, guest isolation, and all kinds of other things that help us. What I'm interested in is none of these settings, and some of them are very important for other things, and I might cover them. Like, as you can see, under guest isolation, you can disable the drag and drop and copy paste and all those things. And this can be done once the machine is booted because it's currently grayed out. But what we're going to focus now is the shared folder. I'm going to create a shared folder. I'm going to always enable it. I'm going to map a network drive, and then I'm going to add a host path. So in this step now, I will specify a path on the host, which is the CISO tools directory. And I'm going to name it tools in terms of the things that it's going to be presented to the host, to the guest, I'm sorry. And I'm going to enable this share, and I'm not going to do it read-only, so it means that the virtual machine will be able to copy and share files. I'm going to OK it, and then actually a pleasant surprise from the installation is that once I've added the share, I can already access the share locally. It looks as network location, and then you can see the tools folder. It's a really nice thing because you used to need to reboot the machine in order to get it to work and all those things, so currently there's no need. I've put a few pieces of software here that I'm going to use during my lab experience, so I'm just going to install them quickly. This is by all means skippable if you know and aware how it works. I'm just going to install 7-zip, next finish. I'm going to install Foxit Reader, so we'll have a PDF reader if I'll need to do something. Nothing here that is too complex. I'm just going to go over and install the software bit by bit. And the main idea is that I want to have this lab functional as a real environment. So if I want to run stuff or I want to do something beyond the normal, operating system, I already have all the software in place. I'm just going to leave the default for all the software. So as you can see, I'm finished the installation of Foxit. Notepad++, very nice software that can do a lot of things for you and also will help us once we need to troubleshoot stuff in terms of logs and those kind of things. So installing it with default setting as well, nothing special, and that's done. Python, which is also a software that I use for all kinds of automation and scripts. It'll leave the default settings, doesn't really matter to me. I'll need to change and modify it later, I'll do it. And for the last step, I'm just going to copy paste the content of sysinternals to a local folder. This is a tool, or at least a set of tools, that often have a lot of uses. I like to keep them on the disk, even though I find myself using only one or two of them on occasion, but it's still a very good software piece to have it handy once you need it, and just like it save it time. And I practically put it as a base for any software that runs Windows on my environment. I'm going to cover a few optional steps. First of all, disabling the firewall. A lot of times you find yourself struggling with network connectivity in the lab environment. By clicking firewall and going to the Windows Defender firewall, you're able to disable the firewall on this machine. I will show you how to do it in this machine, even though I don't particularly recommend it. You can learn a lot by playing with the Windows firewall and also understand a bit more about networking. I will say that for lab experiences, when you're going for the faster or you don't want to troubleshoot things that are not necessarily interesting, you need to turn off the firewall like here, and then the connectivity, at least on the application level, is transparent. So as you can see, there is a private network setting and a public network setting, and it's separate. The idea is that the network itself is decided if it's something that's located on internal network that you trust or an external network that you don't trust. And there is a different firewall profile for each of those. Once we add the machine to the domain, the third one will appear, and I'll show it in a later video. But the main idea is that once you add this network card, how can you tell what's going on? You go to the sharing center, and then you can see that the network card itself, your active network, unidentified network, is connected to a public network, which means that I can keep the private firewall on. It's not going to matter. It's going to only use the public network profile for the time being. But just for the sake of the video, I've disabled the firewall on both, and it gives you this nice little window. A few things that you can do, and this is something that is also best practice. You can turn off the notification, at least in terms of making sure that it doesn't bother you. So you're able to turn off the firewall. That's something that we covered, but it's still going to notify you that things are bad and you need to take an action. What you can do is go to the notification, go to the notification management, and just turn off the notification based on the things that you would like to not be aware of. So I can turn off the firewall notification, and now from the perspective of Windows Defender, it's not going to bother me anymore. I'm going to pop up and says you need something to be done. So I click on the view notification dashboard. It does appear here, but there's not going to be another pop-up that will bother us during the later stage.